All right, just because there's kind of a lot of information with Africa, we're going to split it up between some of the independence movements, what happens in South Africa, and then some of the modern issues. So as far as decolonization in Africa is concerned, what we are going to see is that African countries, just like Indian countries, are going to become very frustrated with being involved in two different world wars for conflicts they didn't feel like they needed to be involved in. And so the African nations began demanding independence. Now, what we do see is this history of colonization in Africa is going to have an impact on how successful those movements were. So those that were under indirect control, and if you remember, under imperialism, indirect control means that they had self-rule, that there were leaders appointed from their country. Those that had indirect control are going to experience an easier transition to independence. They understood the process of government, they understood economic issues. But those that had been controlled with direct rule are going to have wars for liberation, because direct rule had not provided for the ability of individuals to have their limited self-rule. And so that's going to be a problem. One of the other big things is how the Europeans had split up the region. Ethnic strife is going to plague the movement for independence in Africa, because the Europeans had kind of created these artificial borders that separated similar cultures and enclosed enemies together. And so that's one way that the Europeans were able to exploit this issue in Africa, because those groups were so unwilling to work together and were further divided. And so that's going to cause some problems in this movement for independence. So if you remember, after the Berlin Conference and that scramble for Africa, by 1900, there were really only two states in Africa that had maintained their independence, Ethiopia and Liberia. And Liberia is an interesting story you'll get into in U.S. history. So when you look at this map, you can see the areas that are going to gain control as time kind of goes on. South Africa is going to be an interesting story that we'll get into just because of what happens there with apartheid. So Ghana is going to be the first state to receive its independence after World War II. It had initially been controlled by the British. And as the war kind of had progressed, they allowed, initially right after the war, African leaders to be a part of the legislative council, so to kind of increase their role in the government. And so what happens is one of the leaders, Kwame Nkrumah, is going to kind of stand out and push for this independence movement. So he is going to be supportive of boycotts and strikes. And eventually, they are going to see that Ghana will gain its independence. It's 1957. I just realized that the PowerPoint says 1947. So sorry, let me fix that. They're going to gain their independence in 1957. And Nkrumah's got a lot of ideas for Ghana. First off, he names the area Ghana after the old Sudanic state that we had previously learned about, the Ghana Empire, the Gold Coast, that had made such profit and eventually would fall to the Mali Empire. But he is going to develop new roads and new schools and establish welfare programs. But this is going to hurt the economy, because the expense of all of this is not going to be something that he had kind of expected or understood to happen. And so that's going to lead into a lot of his programs kind of being undermined. And he is a huge supporter of Pan-Africanism, uniting African people, saying that they kind of have the similar culture, the similar lifestyle, and they should be coming together. And so they argue that he wanted to kind of create this United States of Africa. So while he was away in 1966, the military is actually going to seize power. And from that moment forward, we see a lot of conflict that continues between military and civilians trying to establish control in Ghana. In 2000, they have the first open elections, and in 2001, you're actually going to see the first peaceful transition of power since 1957 between civilians and the military. So understand the big thing with Ghana is that it is kind of this nonviolent movement. It had been indirect control. So Nkrumah is able to move into this position through boycotts and strikes. So it's not going to be a largely violent movement. And then obviously, big other thing is that it's going to be the first state to gain its independence after World War II. A different story is what happens in Kenya. So Kenya is actually kind of going to have two issues. Not only do you have Jomo Kenyatta, who is this significant leader in championing rights for African communities, But you also have a group known as the Mau Mau, which were using guerrilla tactics to fight off the French. So Kenyatta never denounces the Mau Mau. He's not really associated with them, but he doesn't denounce their guerrilla tactics or their violence. And so he is actually arrested for that. And so this conflict continues to go on within the nation between those that are trying to fight off colonization. And by the time that Kenya gains its independence in 1963, over 10,000 Africans had been killed. So different from Ghana because we are seeing this violence that is going to be associated within the region. Once Kenya gains its independence, we are going to see that it is dealing constantly with corruption and terrorism. Kenyatta is actually going to rule until about 1978, but the country is going to go back and forth. In 2010, they create a new constitution, but shortly after that, we're going to see that there is constant conflict with terrorism and Al-Shabaab that's located in Somalia. And so there are different attacks by Al-Shabaab that we see in 2013 and 2015, they attack a university. And so that terrorism kind of close to that border is going to continue to pose problems for Kenya. And then we have Algeria. And Algeria had been a French colony that is going to be confronted with this movement for independence as well. So there are about 1 million French individuals living in Algeria, over 10 million Africans living in the region. And so there is this push for independence in 1954. The Algerian National Liberation Front, or the FLN, is going to push for its independence. It's going to take some time. It is going to take some fighting. You're going to see constant conflict, so much so that by the time they gain their independence, over 500,000 people are going to have died in this conflict. And then Algeria is going to be confronted with very similar issues of how to run a government effectively. Initially, we see a movement to support socialism, but then that movement is overthrown by a military commander. And then we see the rise of Islamic militants in the region as well. So there is kind of this back and forth. And really understanding what happens in Africa and what happens in other regions is because of imperialism, because these countries had not been able or had been limited as far as ruling was concerned. They had not been able to exercise rights. They had not been able to understand fully the duties that they needed to establish. And so that independence, that newfound independence, is going to pose problems. And again, you've got different people, different groups of people who may not always be supportive of one another living in the same region. All right, so that's going to pause for Africa just because there's a lot that goes on with apartheid.